Notice of motion. Councillor Dion Swiggs.
So this notice of motion is just to, it's really to get information out around what's going on in Manchester Street. We've had quite a lot of commentary in the media recently around Manchester Street. I've been asking for about 5 months to get a clear picture about what's been going on. It's taken a lot of work to just get some information, but I think we need to get the information out publicly in a formal report because there is a lot of misinformation about who owns it, who's doing it, who's delivering it. And I think, you know, getting a clear report around what's happened there and what we're going to do forward is really important.
That's great. So you'd like to move the motion? I'm happy to second it. I'm going to second the motion. Sorry?
I thought it was already seconded.
What?
No, this was a different thing. The original one. It's different wording.
Oh, did
Okay. Well, I just want to speak to it as well at some point.
does it? Sorry, did you already have a seconder for it?
For the original one, when my wording was
Sorry,
you can second it. It's fine.
Okay. Did you want to second it?
No, I just want to
Okay. All right. Okay. So, right. So, has anyone got any questions? No questions. Okay. Right. I'll open it up for discussion. Pauline.
Yeah, thank you. Look, the Issue Committee gets regular updates on the Accessible City program in the city. So we're
Sorry.
we're on.
I am going to interrupt because it isn't called the Accessible City program anymore.
Okay.
It's called the Central City Transport Program, and for
Central
obvious
City
reasons, I want everyone to use that phrase.
Thank you. So look, we did have a memo about this a couple of weeks ago. An email came out to all councillors, but the problem is that these roading assets have not yet been handed over to us as council from Otakaro, and any changes will complicate the handover and possibly void some warranties. But I'm sure that these issues can be worked through, and consequently staff have some actions that they've identified for quick action. For instance, removing permanent pedestrian cycle demand along Manchester Street, and this requires the installation of additional cycle call buttons which have been ordered, turning off the bus signals at the super stops during off-peak periods and weekends. There's opportunity to manually intervene at the intersections lightings if required, and currently undertaking modelling to determine if there are any benefits in changing the phasing at Manchester Hereford and looking into changing priority at Manchester and Cashel to allow right turning arrow to the east. So these are all being currently looked at by staff, and we're expecting some information back in March around this. So I am supportive of this, but I do remind members that there is another mechanism that could have been brought straight to our committee.
Yanni?
I just think we're going to get Carmageddon when the town hall opens, when the convention centre opens, when the
There's your headline.
you know, when the Performing Arts Precinct opens, with the Theatre Royal and all the houses being built up and down Manchester Street. We have to look at the inaccessible city on a regular basis and review the cumulative effects of what's happening. And given that Manchester Street is the core boulevard through the middle of it, I think we have to absolutely do this. It is so frustrating when people see lights changing when there's no one there, and then having to wait ages for things to change so people can get access. If you think about Hereford Street in Manchester, Hereford Street is now the major east-west route through into the west end of the city, and yet, you know, it's just the traffic signalling and the phasing is just not working at all. So, you know, I think we really do need to get on top of what's going to happen with the 4 avenues, with the northern arterial extension coming into Manchester Street, all the traffic that that's going to generate, with this whole idea that we're making things more pedestrian and cycling friendly and better for buses. It just doesn't seem to be working. This is, I think, really important that we review this and let's try and find some solutions, because it's just not going to be a satisfactory outcome if we don't.
And Mike?
Thank you. Look, I think everyone around the table would agree that Manchester Street is having a few teething problems, but we do have to remember the objective of Manchester Street is to create a public transport corridor, and obviously the point of that is to encourage the uptake of bus patronage, and we know if we don't do that, the consequences will be dire because of the amount of growth that's predicted and the current amount of people that are using cars. So what we can do to increase public transport needs to be done. And while we do need to do a little bit more tweaking to get it right, the best thing that can happen is for people that aren't using this, coming into the city as a destination, to jump onto the one-way systems, because they are working. Areas where the accessible city has been completed actually works. We are creating a good city, and I think as the leadership team around this for the city, we need to actually start celebrating some of the successes that we are achieving. If we continually complain about things, then people will believe that actually our city is not accessible, and it is. People are finding it actually easy to get in town, and people that are using buses are actually finding it really easy to get into town. So yes, I accept that there's a little bit of work that needs to be done on Manchester Street, but we've got to remember what the objective is. One of the biggest problems we've got at the moment is the road user rules prevent some of the simple things from happening. And like I said in ITE, road user rule unfortunately trumps common sense. And as the ITE committee tried to put through to NZTA was to trial some flashing orange lights. And hopefully if we can get that through, then we may have a much quicker successful outcome to allow cars to actually use a bit of common sense and make sure that the way is clear and let them turn left on a light that's flashing. So I think there's some good things happening. There's a bit of work that needs to be done on Manchester Street, but on a whole, our city centre is working.
Anyone else? Aaron, Glenn?
Yeah, gone are the days of saying to your friends, let's go for a cruise down the Manch, because it would take you forever to get down there. So, which is a shame, because it was such a, I mean, it's such a grand project, and it looks incredible. And if you're biking along there, it's cool, because you can kind of laugh at all the cars as you go past, because they take so long to catch up. And it's a beautiful facility. Mike's right, it's been set up for buses. Sadly, 3.5% of the population use the bus. And if we were really serious after the tens of millions, well, probably going towards 100 million that's been spent on bus facilities, including the interchange and the buses and everything else, if we were to really try and have a go at getting people on the buses, then what we would do, and to back up the infrastructure that's been put in is my point, would be best to trial a former mayoral candidate's idea of free buses. Talk to the government, get them to pay half, and we trial it for 1 year. Just give it a go and see if it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, and then we stop spending so much money on buses at that point. We just put in basic facilities. But if we're serious, let's have a real good slug at it for a year and see how many people will actually get on a bus if they were free. Just an idea.
Sarah, oh sorry, and then Glenn. Sorry, I called Glenn before and I...
Okay, I won't be long, but...
he looks like a Sarah to me. He looks like a Sarah.
I've got a cousin Sarah, but I guess we're never going to have perfect operations on any street. I actually look forward to the day of being caught up in a public transport traffic jam, like a kind of a mini New York with lime scooters flying down the side. I mean, I'm not too worried about it. I just want our streets to fill up and more people getting back into the central city. So, yeah, let's go for it. I don't know why it didn't go through the ITE committee, but anyway, yeah, happy to support.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. Just like to back down on this one. I mean, this is just a really straightforward. This isn't about the debate right now whether we like Manchester Street or not. It's just a really straightforward asking for a report to come to ITE so that the information can be public facing instead of just within the organisation.
Yep. Before I call down to close the debate, I'll just add a bit as well, because you know, there is a sense of frustration that I think people feel around an ideal and an objective that was set a few years ago, and at a time when it was believed that all of the housing along Manchester Street would be completed, and it would be a, you know, sort of genuinely bustling and exciting place to be living and sort of engaging with the main public transport route out of the city and into the city. And you know, timing's everything in this world. But the only reason that I did want to say something is that when the committee is looking at this report when it arrives, I really want them to think seriously about what I think is a problem around over-engineering some of the streets in the central city. And Manchester Street is only one example of that. And I think we've all, you know, had a good look at that intersection of High Street, Chewham Street, and actually that's all it's an intersection between, and it's an unbelievably over-engineered site. And I think a number of the street lights that have been put in actually suggest that people who are driving cars have no idea how to look for people travelling or walking and crossing a street. And we've done it for years and years and years, and I know that we're not always safe in that regard, and intersections are the most dangerous places for both cyclists and pedestrians. But I think that it's there has been a lot of over-engineering, and I'd like the committee to look at that at the same time. So, Dion, I'll get you to close off the debate.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Now, this does this issue has come to this point because for a long time this has been raised, and for a long time we've tried to get some information around it. And the 2 days after I put a notice of motion in, we get a memo, and I'm a little bit disappointed that it takes that type of energy to get a memo to come back. Yes, that's when I put it in. Anyway, so I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed that it got to that point. But the fact is that we need to get some public-facing information about this street. The fundamental failure that I see in this whole argument is that we had this blueprint that was imposed on us, and then after the fact was a central city transport chapter. And the transport chapter didn't overlay some of the blueprint objectives as well as it could have been. And that's one of the fundamentals that I've seen in this. And as Leanne said, the timing of the projects, at this point in time, it was assumed that the stadium was nearly going to be built. And it's a long way from that at this point in time. So thanks everybody for the support on it. I do know what was said yesterday in the ITI committee about me, and I do not take kindly to those kind of comments that were made either.
So,
but thanks.
okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.